Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kalpana Pandey, researcher at Indic Researchers Forum. I welcome you all to session 2, India-Japan Defense Cooperation. For this session, we have Major General Rajan Kochar, Nanai Baldo, Commander Shrikant Deshmukh, Dr. Sitaru Nagao, and Brigadier Ramesh Balan. The session is chaired by Major General S.V.P. Singh. Major General S.V.P. Singh is the former Additional Director General, Artillery, and a veteran of 1971 Indo-Pak War. He had nearly 4 decades of experience in key leadership roles in military operations. An alumnus of the Rashtriya Indian Military College and National Defence Academy, he was commissioned into the artillery in December 1970. He is a graduate of the National Defence College, College of Defence Management, and Defence Services Staff College. He held various command and staff appointments in active combat areas during terrorism and counterinsurgency in sensitive northern, western, and northeast sectors. He participates frequently on a multiple TV news channels as a defense analyst and in discussions with the strategic think tanks. He has authored various articles in different books and journals. He is a member of Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis and United Service Institution of India. He is a recipient of a Vishisht Seva Medal for rendering distinguished services in Operation Rakshak in the Rajouri Punch sector in 1999. Now, the speakers for the sessions are Major General Rajan Kochar. Major General Rajan Kochar, VSM PhD, is a former MGAOC Central Command. He has commanded key logistic units of the Indian Army, such as combatant of a Central Ordnance Depot and divisional ordnance units of an infantry and a rapid divisions. He has done active service in operational areas of Jammu and Kashmir and the Northeast. He is the recipient of Vishisht Seva Medal awarded by the President of India. He has also been awarded the Army Commander's Commendation twice. He holds a doctorate in emotional intelligence and is certified NLP practitioner coach. He is also serving as a vice chairman of National Council of News and Broadcasting. Nanai Beldorf. Nanai Beldorf is an associate research fellow at UNCRIS, Bridges, Belgium, and a senior researcher at Keio Research Institute at SFC, Shandai, Japan. She recently completed a PhD in political science at University, Belgium, and holds a master's degree in European Government, University of Luxembourg. She has a certificate of international law from the BC School of Law, Temple University, Japan campus. Her PhD focused on Japan's defense cooperation, defense equipment and technology cooperation, military exercises, and capacity building, with the strategic partners from the perspective of Japan's national security objectives. She is the recipient of the Japan Foundation Fellowship. She has been awarded the NATO Defense College Partner across the Global Fellowship for 2020. Commodore S.L. Deshmukh, Nausena Medal, retired. Commodore S.L. Deshmukh, Nausena Medal, retired, has served in the Indian Navy for 32 years. He holds qualifications both in marine and aviation fields. He served on a board ship and aircraft carriers. He is a specialist on maintenance of a fighter aircraft and anti-submarines warfare helicopters. He held many operational and administrative appointments, including Principal Director at Naval Headquarters, Commodore Superintendent Naval Aircraft Yard, Director Naval Institute of Aeronautical Technology, and a Project Director of a major naval aviation project. He is alumni of a Defense Services Staff College. Post-retirement from the Indian Navy, he worked with the Tata Group for 5 years and with SUN Group's Aerospace and Defense Vertical as a Senior Vice President for 12 years. He is currently in Pune guiding SMEs in the region to undertake projects under Atmanirbhar Bharat policy. He is currently working with the Manipal Institute of Technology and Manipal Academy for Higher Education as adjunct faculty. He is an avid writer and writes on technical matters and issues of a common interest. His many articles have been published by C3SI DRAS and EJSS. C3SI Pragna Center for Research have recently published his book titled Probable Sino-Russia Military Pact Implications for India and China's Game Plan in Ladakh Imperatives for India. He has also presented papers at various national and international seminars. He is life member of Aeronautical Society of India. Dr. Sitaru Nagao. Dr. Sitaru Nagao is a fellow non-resident at Hudson Institute based in Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Nagao's primary research area is US-Japan-India security cooperation. He was awarded his PhD by Gakushin University in 2011 for his thesis, India's Military Strategy. The first such research thesis on this topic in Japan. Gakushin University is a premier institution from which members of Japanese imperial family have also graduated. Ramesh Bali, an Indian Army veteran with approximately 36 years of service, Brigadier Ramesh Balan, VSM, has an abiding interest in a set of closely interrelated subjects centered around cybersecurity, cyber warfare, cognitive warfare using digital media, and AI. The officer is conversant with the domains of cyber, data science, AI, and behavioral psychology. As an operational practitioner, he is equally comfortable with strategizing their employment and had the opportunity to represent India in Seoul Defense Dialogue on the cyber track as a delegation head. He is pursuing a PhD in cyber talent management. As a group head in the Defense Cyber Agency, his focus was on the formulation of policy, plans, and international cooperation, and was responsible for the formulation of key capstone policy documents and initiatives. He was also responsible for certain classified initiatives and associated capability building. He works for B2B SaaS e-commerce startup firm named Swem Tech Private Limited. I now pass the floor to Major General SVP Singh sir to take the proceeding of the session forward. Thank you.
Sir, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Kalpana, and for the introduction of all the speakers. At the outset, I would like to thank Indic Researchers Forum for honoring me with the session chair with a cream of 5 stalwarts participating in a very important session. So we will start with the Indo-Defense Cooperation, which precedes great sessions which we have had in the morning. Now, Indo-Defense Cooperation, I would say, really what the senior advisor to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe covered this morning was that the two military leaders of the nations must develop very close bonds and relationship in military matters. It is a very important message which has emerged. Now, let us see how the Indo-Defense Cooperation has taken off. The Indo-Pacific region, as we know, is the confluence of the Indian and the West Pacific Oceans. It has emerged as a focal point of global attention. India and Japan are at the forefront of efforts to maintain stability in this region, in this changing world order. Both nations have a similar stance, converging stances on the rules-based order, on the democratic system, and the free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Therefore, it makes them natural allies in maintaining peace and stability in the region. Now, the defense cooperation between the two countries gained momentum in the early 2000s. And in 2014, during Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan, the two countries elevated their relationship to special strategic and global partnership, which really opened up new avenues in the Indo-Japan defense cooperation. The Joint Vision 2025, based on the special strategic and global partnership, established in December 2015 during Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit, it reflects the long-term political, economic, and strategic goals and aims to achieve what I have mentioned, the free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific based on rule-based order. Now, defense cooperation is central to this partnership. Both have shared security concerns. There's a need to maintain balance of power in Asia. We should avoid vacuum, or else we have seen that China doesn't blink an eye to enter wherever a little vacuum comes to exist. So we have seen it in cases of the island territories of South China Sea and Southeast Asia. So this is a very important point in our cooperation. And it was Prime Minister Abe who really reactivated in 2007 the Quad in a speech to our parliament, in which he talked about the confluence of the two seas. Now, as we go forward on this, the Indo-Pacific region, as we know, is facing myriad challenges, majorly due to shifting balance of power and increasing uncertainty about the future world order and how it will look like. This has led to various nations stepping up their security strategies and defense cooperation. Based on this, we have to seek what are the threat analysis or how the situation is prevailing right now, particularly for Japan when we talk about China. You see, Japan's security challenge emerges from three countries. From the north, Russia with the northern island territories, then China, and then North Korea. If you really look at it, it is the nuclear war which faces Japan and which United States will have to face if it has plans to defend Taiwan. So that is the main security concern. Militarization of South China Sea, building of artificial islands on the reefs, and infrastructure having military installation is a menacing threat to the ASEAN countries, to Japan, to South Korea. And this has to be countered. So what has Japan done? It has veered away from the pacifist constitution by unveiling the national security strategy, the national defense strategy, and the defense build-up programs, the three themes which they came out with in December 2022. Really, it calls for boosting defense spending in the face of growing threats from its regional rivals. Now, in this paper, the National Security Strategy, Japan wants and has stated to promote training and exercises as well as defense equipment and technical collaboration with India. So in this context, it is critical to examine where the two countries fit in each other's strategic vision. You see, in this regard, 2019 marked a major breakthrough in bilateral relations, particularly in the defense sector. Setting up the 2+2 ministerial dialogue with the respected defense and foreign ministries, Japan was the only second country with whom India went in for such a high-level engagement. After this, that was after the United States. It was Russia and Australia which followed in 2021. In addition, both countries have a national security advisors dialogue and a defense policy dialogue. Now, it has also led to a range of defense-related agreements and initiatives, joint military exercises, collaboration in defense technologies, and proposed sale of military hardware. A number of proposals are in the air. In 2017, was set up the Joint Working Group on Defense Technology and Cooperation and Joint Research and Development in Robotics, UAVs, Cybersecurity. Now, the 2+2 dialogue also covered the counterterrorism, the regional security, and defense technology cooperation. In September 22, the FOIP, once again, the Free, Open, and Inclusive Indo-Pacific, the support to the ASEAN unity and concrete cooperation in India's Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, the IPOI, and the ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific, AOIP, became the salient features of this Indo-Japan Defense Cooperation. In September 22 also, India and Japan agreed to increase bilateral defense cooperation and conduct additional military exercises at the second 2+2 meeting in Tokyo. As a result, the Indian Air Force and Japan's Air Self-Defense Force held their maiden joint air exercise Veer Guardian in January this year, which seeks to promote air defense cooperation between the two sides. In existence have been bilateral exercises between the two sides. The Indian Army and the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, GIMEX, and exercises Dharma Guardian are the ones which are in vogue, as well as the Malabar and Milan naval exercises. So along with this bilateral, the air exercise illustrates the growing resolve and commitment of both nations to enhance their strategic ties and security cooperation. These exercises interoperability. The air exercise conducted multi-domain air combat missions, sharing the best practices. So that has been a very major move forward. Now, looking beyond, you see, Quad has become the centerpiece when Prime Minister Abe reactivated. And as great power conflict in the region intensifies, India and Japan, along with the United States and Australia, have come closer in this reactivated Quad. I feel now is the time to define its security architecture having teeth. You see, we have done well on the health and the COVID and other soft power areas, but now is the time that we give it a further form to cater for our security architecture. Quad part, since the release of the Indo-Japan Joint Declaration of Security Cooperation in 2088, both countries have made progress in joint efforts towards shared security. India and Japan have been cooperating on defense technology since 2014-15, when the Joint Working Group on Defense Equipment and Technology Cooperation was established. It has focused on bilateral defense trade, partnership, and to promote co-production and development of defense equipment. Both countries reached an understanding in 2015 on two major security agreements, focusing on security measures for the protection of classified military information and the transfer of defense equipment and technology. In September 2017, India and Japan held their first ever defense industry forum. In the broader context of Quad security dialogue, recently the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, the SIDM, and Japan's International Security Industry Council, the ISIC, have entered in an MOU to work with governments and non-government organizations to help develop ecosystems to build defense industrial bases of both countries and to strengthen capacity of the Quad. In 2020, both countries deepened their maritime security cooperation by signing mutual logistics and supply agreement, which granted access to each other's bases and related supplies. The Bharat Electronics, a defense PSU, is in talks with two Japanese businesses, Toshiba Corporation for lithium-ion batteries, technology, and Jupiter Corporation for supply of anti-drone systems. If successful, this will provide big boost to defense cooperation between the two countries. The 2022 National Defense Strategy and National Security Strategy of Japan is expected that bilateral and multilateral defense relations will be further strengthened. Service to service exchanges will take place in a variety of domains, including maritime and cybersecurity. Japan's intention is to enhance training and exercises, as well as defense equipment and technical cooperation with India. It has been expressly said so in their strategy document. So, having said this much, what does the future look like? We have seen in the previous sessions that the very strong forward move is taking place in Indo-defense relations. But there are still many untapped avenues, particularly defense-related, where two sides are still thinking aloud or still in the state of negotiations. For example, I'll give you the Shin-Moya US-2 amphibian aircrafts. The sale is one of the biggest stalemates in Indo-Japan defense ties. While significant progress appeared to have been made during the 2020 Defense Expo, the deal's future remains questionable, perhaps under bureaucratic pressure. In addition, the reciprocal access agreement that Japan has with nations like Australia is much more comprehensive than the Indo-Japanese Mutual Logistics and Supply Agreement, which is much narrower in scope. So we have to think on all aspects: defense, logistics, supply chain, which is so important in today's world, and what the Russian-Ukraine war has really sent a big message on that. In the end to this, I will just say that the fervor and momentum of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and of Prime Minister Modi when they worked in synchronization as a driving force in Indo-Japan relationship must remain alive to further strengthen defense cooperation, deepening defense exchanges, expanding maritime cooperation, especially maritime domain awareness, and increasing defense equipment and technological collaboration were all key themes of Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh's address to the 2+2 meeting dialogue in 2022. The Japanese ambassador to India, Satoshi Suzuki, is on record to have stated that Japan can assist India in developing an indigenous fifth-generation stealth aircraft, notwithstanding that India too has its advancement in its own Atmanirbhar defense taking place in all fronts. Also, a future generation naval vessels and submarines have been offered. So therefore, the defense and security cooperation is an important component of India's strategic engagement with Japan, and such a commitment is expected to open up new avenues of collaborative development in defense technologies in the future. Now I shall hand over to Major General Rajan Kochar, a very eminent speaker on strategic affairs on the national level. And he's seen all TV channels and is sought after. He shall be speaking on diversification of India's arms procurement and Atmanirbhar Bharat, opportunity for Indo-Japan defense partnership. Over to you, General Rajan.
Sir, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Can I be heard?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, at the outset, I will thank General SVP Singh, because he has covered most portion of my talk, and thanks to you, sir, because I'll be able to skip out those portions which have already been covered. I extend a warm welcome, Konichiwa, as they call it in the Japanese, who are Japanese panelists today. It's extremely important for these two countries to understand each other better. And what best than a defense cooperation and collaboration? In geopolitics, it is extremely important that common interests, shared vision, and mutual respect bind nations together. The edifice of good relations between Japan and India is based on these aspects. I was privy to the discussion earlier, what was taking place in the previous session, and I got an impression that possibly all is not well between Japan and India, and I want to remove that impression amongst us here because our relationship is on a very strong level. We have challenges, but at the same time, we must not forget that these two countries have common interests, shared vision, and mutual respect. And especially in the Indo Pacific region, it's extremely important to understand because we both countries share a similar outlook on regional security, economic growth, and strategic interests. If these factors, if we keep it at the background and we understand it, you will be able to appreciate the deep sense of friendship between the two countries. In recent years, we have actually evolved into a strategic partnership with each other. And especially the young researchers who are watching this program, they need to understand what is a strategic partnership because most of us, we keep on talking in the forums using big jargons and big words. Strategic partnership is where you share your technology with each other, where you share your strengths with each other. And that is where Japan and India are extremely important. So before I move on to the defense aspect, extremely important to understand Japan's security scenario, which has been covered very briefly by the earlier speakers. Today in the Northeast Asia region, Japan faces a problem with a China-Russia nexus. We recently saw both these countries deploying their H6 and Tu-95 bombers in this region. There are numerous instances of launching of Chinese missiles in the exclusive economic zone of Japan. The North Korean threat also is extremely important for Japan, as I have certain statistics that more than 50 missiles have been launched by North Korea across Japan. And what is the intention of all this? And then to finally cap it all, the conflagration of the Taiwan imbroglio also poses a serious threat to Japan. Therefore, today, Japan has reshaped its doctrine. We are uh, seeing the new national security strategy come into play, which actually gives it a counter strike capability. So we have to understand now Japan is looking now to shed its posture of a self defense army into a counter strike capability, and it's a white paper, it's a defense white paper, which I've just read, has identified, I think 28th of July 2020, it has been published. Japan has identified China as its greatest strategic challenge. So the very fact that we both countries have identified the same China as its most strategic challenge should actually bring us closer to each other. So we also need to understand the importance of the Indo-Pacific in this entire discussion with Japan. The Indo-Pacific is the vision, I would say, of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He laid out the strategic vision as the confluence of the two seas during his visit to India in 2006 and 7. Now, why this region is the most important? Because it is the largest economic center of the world with major sea lanes and maritime trade routes such as the Malacca Strait. It is also home to nine busiest ports in the world, with about 65% of the world's maritime trade passing through this region. So, therefore, China is posing a serious threat to Indo-Pacific, and therefore the Accord has actually come about, and therefore the AUKUS has come about. So all this we need to understand, and we also have uh, Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, and India's Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative. So both these things have actually meshed together to bring the actually countries closer to each other. Talking about the momentum of our defense cooperation, it started as early as 1999. It would be wrong to presume, if the people are being given the impression that it has started only a few years back. It started in 1999 with joint exercises between the Coast Guards. If you remember the MV Olandra incident, where the Indian Coast Guard rescued a Japanese ship from the pirates. So the actually countries got also together in 2004 tsunami, where so much of destruction was caused to Japan, and that is how the two countries have uh, come closer to each other. Today, we have a special strategic and a global partnership with each other. We also have a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. So these are the very important things. Of course, the 2.2 ministerial prologue, as has been mentioned by the previous speaker. So India is among the few countries where Japan has a reciprocal provision of supply and services. So we need to understand this, and also we need to understand that we have acquisition and a cross servicing agreement, ACSA, as we call it with each other. And it's therefore these joint working groups which have been working on the defense equipment and technology. The last meet was held on 26 June 2023, and there have been seven meetings before that. So you can understand this entire gamut, that Indo-Japanese strengthening of the partnership is an ongoing process, and it's going on. A great deal of emphasis has been laid on the joint exercises. Mentioned by the previous speaker, we had the JAMX, we had the Malabar, we had the Veer Guardian. So I'm not elaborating on these things. It has already been spoken. Uh, Now let's come to the focus of my talk, the key areas for defense cooperation. What are we looking at between India and Japan? We are looking at agreements for the exchange of supply and services between the two countries. We are looking at the new national defense strategy of Japan, and the intention which has been mentioned in this strategy. I want to highlight a, a paragraph which mentions a deepen bilateral and multilateral defense exchanges, including a service-to-service exchange in a broad range of fields, including maritime security, space, and cyber security, and while promoting training and exercises as well as defense equipment and technological cooperation. And here I would like to mention the Japan and India Vision 2025, which seeks a synergy between India's Act East policy and Japan's partnership for quality infrastructure. So with this intention, uh, Prime Minister Kishida, he announced during his visit to India in March 2022 an investment target of 5 trillion yen, which is approximately $37 billion dollars in India over the next 5 years. So here we are talking of Japanese investment in India, which has been promised by the Japanese Prime Minister for $37 billion dollars. And the Japanese budget has, especially the defense budget, has therefore been increased from 1% of their GDP to 2%. So these are very important indicators where Japan and India are heading together. So let us now identify the opportunities, because it's extremely important to identify what opportunities are there for these two countries to collaborate and cooperate with each other. Japan has identified 12 key technological fields to strengthen its national security, which includes insect-sized robots, electromagnetic barriers, unmanned systems, cyber defense, and advancement in the non-kinetic warfare using artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and so on. And here I would like to add the edifice of our cooperation starts, because there is much to share in artificial intelligence, there is much to share in technology and quantum computing. Japan has also been scouting around for key defense equipment. Today, Japan has 1,100 companies involved in the manufacture of fighter jet aircrafts, 1,300 companies involved in the manufacture of tanks, and 8,300 companies in building the destroyers. These companies possess special and advanced skills and have a production and a technological basis in Japan. Japan is pursuing to build 100 sixth generation fighter aircrafts by 2030 in collaboration with Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, Boeing, etc. Japan has also proposed a homogeneous stealth fighter aircraft on a hybrid model of F-22 and F-35 at the cost of 40 billion US dollars. So India has this opportunity now, because India also does not have a sixth generation fighter aircraft program. So we can join hands with Japan under the GCAP consortium. So this is the first opportunity I would like to highlight here. The second opportunity is Japan has lifted the embargo on the exports of the lethal military equipment. You see, earlier Japan had a policy that we will export everything, but we will not export the lethal military equipment, including missiles and jets. So now it has opened the doors to India and 11 other countries. So this move is seen as a very positive signal. Let us now showcase the Indian defense industry, because it would be of interest to Japan and my Japanese panelist here. We recently showcased the ALS-50 loitering ammunition. So I want to just highlight this loitering ammunition, or kamikaze as it is called, because it actually bridges the gap between a cruise missile and a normal UAV. So this will be an area which would be of interest to Japan. UAV for ISR intelligence and reconnaissance and surveillance, nano UAVs such as the Doot and Parush. These are the two nano UAVs which have been built by India. It would be of interest to Japan. And we have showcased all this in the recent Indo-Pacific Armed Forces Conference held at New Delhi, where 24 army chiefs of various countries were present. Japan would also be interested in the BrahMos and the Akash missile systems. So we are now looking at these areas of collaboration. India today ranks as the fourth largest spender on military expenditure globally, and Japan is at the 10th place. So here is an opportunity for Japan to expand its bilateral trade between India and Japan. And let me remind the viewers, it has hit a record high in financial year 2021-22 to $20.57 billion. So we should not be having an impression that the things are not happening. Things are happening at a very fast pace, and India intends to achieve its export targets for defense to 35,000 crores by 2025. So this is an important area. One more important area I would like to bring here is the artillery guns. The Pinaka rockets and the launchers, the radars, the simulators, the armored vehicles, because these are being exported by India in a big way. There is a global demand for LCA Tejas, light combat helicopters, aircraft carriers, and MRO activities. So these are the areas which I have identified for collaboration between India and Japan. We could get into the dual use technologies such as the UAVs, robotics, intelligence systems, cyber security cooperation between Japan and India, and especially the 5G, and now actually moving to the 6G technology. All this has been a topic for discussion in the joint working groups which we are actually having with Japan. So we see and envisage the global role between India and Japan today. It's extremely important because we are members of Quad, we are members of the ASEAN, and we have all like-minded countries also getting together in the region. We have also the formation of the Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness to strengthen the maritime capability of these two countries. And Japan's recent announcement, I want to highlight here, of an investment of a staggering $75 billion to assist the economies in the Indo-Pacific region by 2030 is a very significant step. And I would now conclude my talk in mentioning that Atmanirbharta journey of India has gone notches higher. We are offering expertise in building fighter jets and submarines and sharing of information and technology. Japan has demonstrated its commitment to enhance its strategic partnership with India, and I'm extremely confident and I'm optimistic, I would say that in future we are going to see our defense corridors, Japanese companies coming to India, investing here, and we investing in Japan in their defense corridors. I see a very, very bright future for the defense industry as far as India and Japan is concerned. And I would like to conclude in the words of Henry Ford, coming together is a beginning, staying together is a progress, and working together is a success. So with this, I end my talk, and I look forward to a very fruitful discussion from the next speakers. My best wishes to all of them. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, General Kochar. You have really enlightened all of us and perhaps the research community as well. You see, you have really touched upon the strategic partnerships which are emerging and the threats which emerged, the joint exercise that Russia and China did over the Japan seas some time back when their fighters had flown. Not only that, the blockade of Taiwan twice in the last year or so, based on Nancy Pelosi's visit and then subsequently the president going and visiting the House Speaker McCarthy on American soil. So those were very dangerous, where the missiles have also fallen near the Japanese waters, and which has really egged on Japan now to move ahead in its national security strategy and to produce missiles which could strike the Chinese on their mainland as well. Now, those are the major changes which are taking place. You have also spoken about the opportunities. And yes, definitely the opportunities are there in the technology front. Japanese actually are looking for dual technologies. With the Americans also, their main cornerstone has been dual technologies. And I think we should also exploit that, which will be a great force multiplier for us. The second opportunity you mentioned was very important. Japan has lifted the embargo on export of lethal equipment, the offensive equipment, and that will take Japan forward in the world community as once again a major defense power. And that is very important. They're spending $320 billion, $320 billion US dollars will be spent in the next 5 years on their defense. So it will give them the capability. And I think they have been more egged on and guided by the Russian-Ukraine war, which says you have to stand on your own and not depend, since wars will not be short or swift anymore. So thank you very much, General Rajan. Now I will request Commodore Srikant Desmukh to take the second session forward. He will be speaking to us on the importance of the Andaman and Nicobar Command for Indian-Japan relations. Over to you, Commodore Desmukh.
Thank you so much, sir. Just give me a minute for share the presentation.
Certainly.
So is the presentation visible?
Yes, it's coming up. Yes, it is very much there.
Thank you so much, sir. Chairman, sir, co-panelists and friends, a very good afternoon. First of all, my thanks to Indic Researchers Forum for giving me the opportunity for dwelling on this very important subject in relation to Bharat-Nippon relationships. It is quite a complex subject and would warrant an examination of various correlated aspects. Accordingly, the presentation would cover areas as shown on the slide. As a great Chinese strategist, Sun Tzu had said, "He who is prudent and lies in wait for enemy who is not will be victorious." We need to use these words effectively for Andaman and Nicobar Islands, keeping in mind the current situation in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. As we all know, India currently has multiple problems on its platter to tackle. Residual pandemic effects, Afghanistan, Pakistan, China issues, instabilities in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions have had bearing on the India geopolitical, economic stability, and the security. Impact of these issues on India's global prestige can be significant, and a very deft handling of this situation has become necessary for India. This task is really arduous because of limited resources available to India. This is where India would need to bank upon partnership with countries like Japan. Though various measures have already been initiated by India to stabilize its economy and tackle situations on various other fronts, a lot more certainly needs to be done if we want to be relevant in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. This is where Andaman and Nicobar Islands and our Joint Services Command would play a very vital role. Before we delve into analyzing factors related to importance of Andaman-Nicobar Command, it would be necessary for us to briefly focus on the current geopolitical scenario in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. These regions are undoubtedly critical for security and the economic well-being of both India and Japan. China's hegemonic behavior in the Indo-Pacific region in general and in South China Sea in particular, militarization and the creation of artificial islands are all detrimental to the freedom of navigation and rule-based order in Indo-Pacific region. It is indisputable that the open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region is important for maintaining peace, economic, political stability, safety, and security in that area, as well as in IOR. In addition, China's claims on other countries' EEZ, illegal, unprotected, and unregulated fishing activities, and surreptitious survey operations in IOR also pose a danger to the long-term economic stability and security of India and other countries in the region. As this is not enough, predatory financial investment by China in countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka have changed the geostrategic calculus in the region. On the economic front, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Pact led by China has its unique implications for India. In view of the above, it is imperative for India to have a comprehensive strategy to tackle problems posed by China and maintain its importance in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. Keeping India's current economic conditions in mind, partnerships and the strategic alignments would be very important for India. It is encouraging that many countries are willing to cooperate with India for protecting the rule of law in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. Japan has expressed a very special interest in working with India in many spheres, including defense for the above task. The Andaman and Nicobar Command has an important role to play in this context. Before we move forward, it would be appropriate for us to briefly examine Indo-China, Japan-China, and Indo-Japan relations. As we are aware, South Asia, comprising Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, the Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka have been the hotbed of India-China strategic competition for years. The border issues has another major problem between India and China, and they have clashed multiple times along their disputed land borders in the Himalayas. In addition, China-led BRI poses security threat and RCPE the economic threat to India. In addition, China's access to the key points along the Indian Ocean, including Gwadar in Pakistan, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and Chittagong in Bangladesh, as part of the string of pearls strategy, pose its own problems for India. And as the last straw on the probable camel's back, the Galwan Valley turmoil has added fuel to the fire. Japan and China, the neighboring countries, also have various concerns between themselves. Despite having strong trade relations, the discord between them is quite evident. Both the countries view each other with suspicion, harbor negative perspective of each other, and worry about the future confrontations. Beijing and Tokyo have major discord on sovereignty of the group of islands in the East China Sea called Senkaku by Japanese and the Diu by Chinese. History to even now remains a neuralgic issue between the Sino-Japanese relations. As far as the Indo-Japan relations are concerned, the friendship between the two countries has long history rooted in the spiritual affinity and the strong cultural and civilization ties which date back to 752 AD. Apart from the annual summits, the annual foreign ministers level strategic dialogue, defense ministers meetings, NSA level dialogues, ministerial level 2+2, dialogues and other consultations and other bilateral dialogical mechanisms ensure regular high-level and functional engagements. Economically, in addition to 35 billion US dollars investment already made, Japan in 2022 committed for further investment of 42 billion US dollars in India. Both countries do have a strong cooperation in disaster management, skill development, health, railways, infrastructure, science and technology sectors. Japan is also an important member of the Quad. About Indo-Japanese defense cooperation, it could be said that India-Japan defense and security partnership has evolved over the years, and today it forms an integral pillar of the bilateral ties. Institutionalized, which was pointed out, the tri-service and the Coast Guard exchanges between Japan and India have strengthened these bonds further. In addition, due to synergetic convergence on the strategic matters, there is significant concurrence on issue of peace, security, and stability of the Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. This has a very strong linkage to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Coming to the Japan's connect with Andaman Nicobar, it is interesting to note that the Japan took over these islands from the British in early 1940s. INA Chief Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose convinced Japan to hand over the islands to India, and the India then tricolor was hoisted in islands in December 30th, 1943. Japan thus has historical connect with Andaman Nicobar and understands its strategic significance in the Bay of Bengal. Japan also understands that increasing the stakes in the region will help it in enhancing its strategic foothold in Indo-Pacific affairs. Japan shares India's aspirations with its policy of free and open Indo-Pacific, in which Andaman and Nicobar Islands have a very major role to play. This explains Japan International Cooperation Agency's investments in projects in Andaman Nicobar, amongst other projects in India. It is important to appreciate that Japan's partnership with India and its investment in Andaman Nicobar is a strategic affair, and it's not against any specific country. It's an expansion of Japan's shared vision of maintaining a stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Japan feels that strengthening of Andaman Nicobar will help in maintaining better safety and security in that region. Indo-Japan collaboration in this area is a testament of the growing trust between the two countries. This factor will remain critical in determining Andaman Nicobar connection to the strategic future of Indo-Pacific as well as IOR. Let us first see the brief historical perspective related to ANI. The Andaman Nicobar Islands are among the most strategically located island chains in the world. These islands, forming a key part of Seoul Archipelago in Bay, straddle important sea channels which are critical for India's strategic interest. They are also important for maintaining stability in the common maritime space between India and the Southeast Asia. In view of the current geopolitical situation and the nodal position of Andaman Nicobar, many littoral countries as well as global powers have sought to engage in security collaborations to ensure free movement along the slopes. For this, the Indo-Japan partnership in both economic and the defense spheres would serve a very important function. We should be able to discern the role of Andaman Nicobar Command in this context. The Andaman Nicobar Command, or the ANC, was created in the year 2001 to safeguard interest of the Southeast Asia and the Strait of Malacca by increasing rapid deployment of military assets in that region. The Andaman Nicobar Command plays a critical role in providing administrative support to naval platforms and other military assets which are sent on deployment to East Asia and the Pacific Ocean. India has sought to leverage the potential of the islands and enhance its capabilities to facilitate control over the vital global shipping route. This is the most important point, as we know, because the global trade has got significant importance for the economic well-being of the nations which are involved. Next comes to the control over the critical shipping choke points. This is where an importance of Andaman Nicobar Islands will be quite evident, because our EEZ and our influence on this connect has got connect with Andaman Nicobar Islands, as the Malacca Strait is a paramount economic point for the numerous countries in the area. This also acts as a Quad force multiplier. The Quad's importance, which is increasing in the coming years, and the strengthening of the Quad activities started by the late Prime Minister of Japan, is expected to pay dividends in coming years. It is also important to protect the historic and the contemporary geostrategic soft and hard power in the region. Port development, which is important once again for India and Japan for maintaining the economic stability in this particular region. India has undertaken development of many ports in and around the littoral countries. We also have got an important task on our hand of protection of exclusive economic zone. Our region suffers from the problems of piracy, and ANC seems to be the provider of the safety and security of exclusive economic zone in this area. This particular protection also helps in protecting the blue economy of the countries in and around this region. All these factors point out towards the strategic importance of Andaman and Nicobar Command, both for India and Japan. Thus, in the coming years, India and Japan would need to factor growing strategic needs for stability in the Indo-Pacific region and Indian Ocean in their plans. Ensure that the joint efforts would facilitate the following in the Indo-Pacific and Iowa region: maintaining rule of law and freedom of navigation, preserving the blue economy of the region, preventing blatant EEZ violation, strengthening disaster relief, human and disaster relief, preventing illegal operations in the region. Further, India and Japan need to pool in their resources for developing comprehensive maritime domain awareness. This is especially important because of the operations of certain countries which are inimical to our interests. This is important for acquiring the granular and accurate knowledge of both surface and subsurface actors. This has become critical with China's growing economic and the strategic interest and the commensurate naval presence in the IOR, including regular forays by Chinese nuclear submarines. It is also important to make Andaman and Nicobar Command capable of multi-domain 24/7 operations. Improving network-centric capabilities of Andaman Nicobar is also very important. This cooperation also need to be utilized for making Andaman and Nicobar Command an ideal secondary phase for IFC and DFC. We need to develop Andaman and Nicobar Command as a credible center for SAR, IUU control, pollution control, HADR, as well as credible net security facilitator and the first responder, also to control our inimical powers operating in this region. We also need to support Asian countries in controlling the menaces coming from the dragon. We also need to helped the countries to bolster their blue economy in the region by supporting renewable energy projects, monitored fishing, and exploitation of the sea wealth. It is hoped that above any make Bharat Nippon collaboration a combination to reckon with and to depend upon in the Indo-Pacific and IO regions. Here, I would like to acknowledge that the data collected from the earlier presentation made in the Indic forum and the reference materials from Observer Research Foundation, Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan, and the Pew Research Center have helped me in compiling this presentation. I would like to now conclude by saying that India's platter is currently overflowing with issues related to emerging geopolitical situations. While Indo-China and Japan-China relations have reached a new low, Indo-Japan's centuries-old relations have reached a new peak. Japan fully appreciates the strategic importance of Andaman and Nicobar Islands and has committed to make more investments in India, including ANI. Andaman and Nicobar Command forms certainly a most important part in the Indo-Japan's vision for the safe Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. India-Japan therefore must strengthen the capabilities of Andaman-Nicobar Command, as it would not be only in their interests, but also in the interest of all the stakeholders in this region. Let us wish Taksai, which means a great success to Indo-Japan strategic partnership. Jai Hind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commodore Deshmukh. You covered a wide canvas in the shortest time. I think maximum government and minimum resource you have utilized. So it's been excellent presentation by you. And some points which you mentioned, I would like to highlight. Yes, partnerships are important amongst nations to counter China today. That is what America is doing also. NATO, NATO +5, NATO Plus are on the offer on the platter. You're covered on the string of pearls in South Asia, which endangers India, and India has to counter it. Japan-China negative perspective has historical connotations, and the enmity has always been to the foreplay. Indo-Japan, I think the relationship is cementing, considering its civilization and cultural background. The Buddhism is back in action, I would say. It was tsunami, I think, which was a catalyst to Indo-Japan cooperation in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where Indian Navy and Indian armed forces did a yeoman service in disaster relief. And that's why we are sought in the world to be masters in disaster relief management. You have spoken about the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which also hosts, apart from the tri-service, the Coast Guards. And I think that is very, very important, because Andaman Nicobar Tri-Service Command has given us surveillance over the ASEAN nations, which are very close, 100 kilometers or so, Indonesia, Singapore, there's Thailand, and there's Myanmar. So half the ASEAN nations cover this area, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands has its area of influence, and I would say area of interest also in it. It is an easy reach for us. You see, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, China is emerging in every talk as a major threat. And as far as India is concerned, since 1950s, India and China have been locked in a geopolitical rivalry. China wants the supremacy of the region. China's hegemonic designs to expand its boundaries have been displayed to the world. It has laid claims on legal jurisdiction through own twisted historical perspective and legal perspectives. It has colluded with our northeastern states for insurgency. It is colluded with Pakistan, and now particularly in the BRI and CPEC, where it's passing through our territory, the POK as of now. And now they seek access to the Indian Ocean, having got a base in Djibouti as far as the Horn of Africa is concerned. Now, therefore, in this, it's a gamesmanship. But when we talk of Andaman, Nicobar, and the Indian Ocean, I would say it's a gamesmanship, the great game of the East. It has led to salami slicing on the Indian borders in the mountains and of the island territories, or making artificial islands through reefs in South China Sea and Southeast Asia. So Andaman and Nicobar has a very major role to play. In a world of this fast lane geopolitical dynamics, countries are re-examining its assets in terms of geoeconomics and geostrategy. What really emerges is that geography is therefore, military geography, the most important immovable asset. And in this regard, an in-depth analysis would reveal that the most important geographic entity in the Indian waters are the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. In military terms, the archipelago of Andaman Nicobar has enormous potential, which carries a heavy weight in its strategic importance for the security of the Indian Ocean region and the Indian coastal boundaries. In close proximity lies the choke point of Malacca Straits, which Commodore Deshmukh mentioned, which is an economic lifeline for China. 60% plus of its trade passes through that, exclusively for China. And India's projection of military naval power has set China thinking for an alternative to the Malacca dilemma, the word used by the Chinese President Hu Jintao in 2003, referring to lack of alternatives and vulnerabilities if a naval blockade took place. You see, China talks of blockade of Taiwan, but they have to safeguard the Malacca Straits as well. So what are the alternatives? One of them is possibly the Sunda Straits. There is the Myanmar pipeline. There is the Kumlin area. There is the Kara Canal in Thailand. There is the Pakistan pipeline from Gwadar, which they hope to exploit. And not only that, they are wanting to reduce dependency of energy and imports from the Middle East by establishing alternative land routes in Central Asia and to Russia. Further, China is exploring possibilities of using the Northern Sea route to diversify trade routes, mainly Russia and Europe, but it is limited by the ice cover. So the point is, whatever China's power projection will be there, Andaman and Nicobar Islands today, the Malacca Strait, we hold the handle. Thank you very much, Commodore Deshmukh. Now I would invite the next speaker of our session, our esteemed speaker, Madame Nane Baldoff, Associate Research Fellow at UNU CRISE. She'll be speaking to us on Japan's defense industry and scope for India-Japan partnership. It's a very important subject, and we look forward to learn and know more about it from you, madam. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair, Mr. Sin. And it's really a great honor, and thank you very much for inviting me to this Indic Researchers Forum. It is my first time joining a India-focused forum. And I first want to thank Dr. Jagannath Panda for introducing me to closer cooperation between India and Japan. I also wanted to thank the next speaker, Dr. Satoru Nagao. I fondly recall my meeting with him in Tokyo 2 years ago, and this was when I was really writing my PhD. And for me, Japan-India cooperation wasn't something close to my heart. I did not know really much about it, so I learned a great deal from him. And ever since, I've been just intrigued and attracted by the whole, the present Japan-India cooperation, but the potential of the bilateral cooperation. So my intervention, I would like to also share with, I have a presentation to share. Let's see if I can do that. Give me a second, please. So, entire screen. No, I'm not sure how to share that. Okay, I'm not able to share my PowerPoint, so that's okay, but I will just speak from my notes. But I will be looking at my PowerPoints. Okay, so today I have 3 points, which is to introduce the importance of thinking about defense industry and space in tandem. And then I go on to the second section, which is Japan's current efforts in strengthening its defense production and industry. And then the last section will be about Japan-India Space Corporation, especially the Moon, LUPEX, and the Quad, and potential cooperation for future. And then I conclude. The reason why I want to focus on space when talking about Japan's or defense industry is because space really has 3 phases. It has a phase of national security, and it has a phase of economic prosperity, and the last is that space has a societal, space brings enormous benefits to societies. For national security considerations, space enables national military power. Since the 1992 Gulf War, which is often referred to as the first space war, space has become a war-fighting domain. While space assets provide support systems during operations and missions on the ground, the current international law is too weak to prevent the weaponization of space. For the second phase, in terms of commercial aspect of space, GPS technology is the most known aspect of space, boosting the global economy. Private companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin are generating enormous revenue from providing launching services and deploying satellite constellations. And the last phase, from civil perspective of space, space enables medical services such as health services in remote areas, transportation, disaster response, weather forecasting, and financial transactions. Over the last 2 decades, innovation in emerging technologies saw exponential growth, helped by decreased costs and expanding to more actors with lower barriers to entry. Especially space, which was once the clear dominion of the privileged few, is now open to many actors, both state and non-state actors. New space-based technologies are emerging rapidly, and both established and emerging states are investing in space in order to safeguard national competitive technological edge. As space is no longer a sanctuary from attack, and space assets and systems are potential targets from peacetime through conflict. In space, no one country can protect its space assets and systems alone. It matters, therefore, who your allies and partners are to ensure space remains sustainable, safe, and secure. Space services are provided by both public and private operators. Dual-use services provided by public and commercial entities are being developed to increase national defense capability. So, strengthening space industry, therefore, means strengthening defense industry, which means strengthening defense capability. I go on to now Japan's current efforts. Now, as you might know, you probably know very well, but Japan is really at a crossroads and in transition. Since the 2022 National Security Strategy and the other 2 strategic documents were published, there have been many developments to strengthen Japan's overall defense capability. One of them is the Defense Reduction Base Reinforcement Act, which was passed this in June and to be enacted this month from today, October 1st, but I guess from Monday. In its effort to become a normal country, Japan faces yet two challenges. First impediment is that Japan has very little experience and expertise in international co-development and exporting traditional military equipments like tanks, submarines, and destroyers, and so on. This lack of experience and expertise in defense market impedes Japan's efforts, despite the relaxation of the ban on arms export in 2014. The second impediment is that Japan, because Japan's defense companies, especially small and medium companies, have produced items for only one client, which is the Ministry of Defense and the Self-Defense Forces, doing business was never profitable because of lack of economies of scale and cost efficiencies. So simply put, it was not attractive as a business. In the last 2 decades, more than 100 companies withdrew from defense business. The operational guidelines of the transfer of defense equipment and technology principles limited the export in 5 specific areas: rescue, transport, warning, surveillance, and mine sweeping. This categorization is not based on profitability consideration or Japanese equipment having competitive edge. Arms export principles and the operational guidelines are currently going through a revision. Under this revision, or after this revision, Japan will be able to export equipment such as the GCAP, the next generation fighter jet, which is to be co-developed by UK and Italy, to third markets. And Japan's first legislation in strengthening on defense industrial base was passed in June and to be enacted from today. Japan will be able to export more items beyond the 5 categories. But all this will take time. The Defense Production Base Reinforcement Act is really only an emergency matter. The aim of this act is to prevent from small and medium companies in the supply chain of defense industry from quitting business. It would be wrong to put too much expectation on this act, and that it will change Japan immediately. So therefore, rather than waiting until Japan changes the way it deals with the traditional defense equipment, we should focus on we should focus our attention on the space and defense industry. At the 2018 summit, Prime Minister Abe and Modi declared their commitment to promoting the long-term sustainability of outer space activities and decided to launch an annual space dialogue for enhancing bilateral cooperation in space. Here I focus on 3 areas where Japan and India space cooperation really matters. The first is bilateral and the scientific cooperation. The second is the Quad. And the third is a potential area of cooperation. First is the bilateral scientific cooperation. The Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, I don't know if you pronounce it this way, this acronym, ISRO, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, the short is JAXA, they agreed to a joint lunar mission in 2017. In the Joint Lunar Polar Exploration Mission, or in short, LUPEX, the mission is to send unmanned lunar lander and rover to explore the South Pole region of the moon by 2026 at the latest. And here we really congratulate India's success, the recent success with the Vikram lander, part of India's Chandrayaan-3 mission, soft landing on the moon's South Pole at the end of this past August. India is the 4th country in the world to succeed in a controlled landing on the moon's surface, and the 1st country in the world to land at the moon's south pole, which is rugged region where deep craters are in permanent shadow, and where ice could be there to provide water, oxygen, and fuel for future mission. For the LUPEX mission, Japan is to provide a rover and launcher in India to provide the lander. At the last summit in September 2023 in New Delhi, Kishida and Modi agreed to strengthen cooperation in the field of advanced technology, including space. And it was the first summit that mentions cooperation in space. Japan has seen a series of setbacks in the recent months. For example, the moon landing mission by Tokyo-based iSpace failed after losing connection with the lander. This would have been the world's first commercial soft landing on moon's surface. The H3 rocket had to be destroyed after it reached space this March. This was another failure. The solid fuel Epsilon rocket, which was designed to launch scientific satellites, failed after launch last October. But seeing India's most recent success, Japan is extremely happy for India and excited to continue working with ISRO and at the national level as well as institutional level. And then I go to Quad. The Quad is slowly but surely making a significant contribution in providing public goods to the Indo-Pacific region. One of the most promising joint activities is the Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness, announced in May 2022. Now, this initiative actually connects 3 of the 8 pillars of the Quad Cooperation: critical and emerging technologies, and space and maritime domain awareness. Regional states, they still rely on legacy technologies to monitor maritime activities, which is from the last century. But this monitoring is inherently limited given the vastness of the oceans. But elevation can affect surveillance coverage, and satellites that track radio frequency data can do the job. One leading commercial operator is the US-based Hawkeye 360. The Quad leaders have committed to convening a commercial space business forum this year. Is everybody okay? Can
Yes.
you hear me? Good, okay. I'm almost done. So the potential, and the last bit is the potential for Japan-India small satellite constellations. Small satellites are now capable of collecting sophisticated data. There is a growing number of small imagery and signals collection satellites, and the rise of data mining and analytic capabilities that interpret data from space. Starlink by SpaceX is an example. In Europe, space and telecommunications companies have come together to form a partnership under the leadership of the European Commission's call for tender related to future European satellite constellation, IRIS-2. And this includes companies such as Airbus Defence and Space, Eutelsat, Hispasat, SES, and Thales Alenia Space. And they have all come together and made a consortium. Now, Japan and India could, this is purely my idea, but Japan alone cannot provide a satellite constellation. There are Japanese companies who are contemplating NEC, for example, but there is a Japanese professor who hinted that Japan could possibly cooperate and establishing a satellite constellation with TPP countries, TPP 11 countries. However, there is another possibility. I think it could be Quad. But Japan and India, at the bilateral basis, they should definitely think about coming together and establishing a satellite constellation framework. And I would like to end my contribution with a final message. Japan is really at a crossroad and in transition. For Japan to become a normal country, able to export defense equipment and to develop with other countries without pacifist constraints, this will take a long time. Instead, focusing our attention on space and space industry may be one of the fastest ways for Japan-India defense cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, madam. It has been an excellent presentation from you, very forthright and frank, transparent. You have highlighted the space program of Japan and how it's gone about. And you have used the word failure. But I think what we have learned under the present Indian dispensation and our Chandrayaan-2, when that mission did not have the successful landing, that the encouragement which Prime Minister Modi gave to the ISRO and to the chairman then was a great message. And the message was that the challenges have to be surmounted. And I think in the present context and your historical perspective of Japan, technological wonders which you have done, you will surmount challenges faster than what you may have said. And our good wishes there to Japan. Yes, we also, as I mentioned, Chandrayaan-2, so your also moon mission doesn't matter. Russia also recently have had, America have also had, so that's very fine. You have spoken about dual technologies, yes. And I think Indo-Japan partnership in dual technologies is up for grabs. Both nations should grab it, the government bureaucracy should grab it and move ahead. And the defense industry has a very important role to play. You have mentioned that you have two challenges. Japan is in a transition, two challenges with your defense industry. And that is firstly, the little experience or expertise in arms exports and development. And also the private defense companies only produce for the government. Yes, it is very much understood, but still your war machinery and the number of companies which you have, I think Japan is there, is right up there, and in much shorter time frame than what you may have mentioned. You know, your companies like Mitsubishi, your companies like Daikin and Toshiba, they're all up there. You know, for example, if I can share with you, Mitsubishi Electric makes radars and missiles alongside fridges and vacuum cleaners. Now, it's a wonderful dual technologies approach. Your Toshiba makes electronic goods, for example, printers, but also produces military-grade batteries. And so I think Japan, in my eyes and the eyes of the Indians, Nippon and Bharat, we have got great defense industry cooperation, collaboration with us. Our SIDM and your ICICI, which is that international council which is there for defense industry, they already have a MOU in this regard to move forward with specific build-up of capacities for Quad, which you had also mentioned on Quad. So I would like to thank you intensely for a very wonderful presentation, notwithstanding that your presentation part didn't come up. I think it was better. It was better that it did not come up, and you did a wonderful job. Thank you very much. I shall now invite the next speaker of the session, and that is Dr. Satoru Nagao to take on the Article 9 and the pacifist constitution which exists in Japan, how we are going to take forward that. So over to Dr. Satoru Nagao.
Thank you very much. Indeed, this topic related to the Article 9, I haven't prepared. This is first time here. This is the topic. Sorry for that. But I will talk about India-Japan Security Cooperation, and I made a presentation. So from now, I will share my data to make a presentation. Is it okay for you? I think
Yes,
this is the only choice. Sorry for that.
I think it is all yours, and it is the Indic Researchers Forum. I think they will accept your proposal. So I can request you to please move ahead. And whatever little, if you could touch on Article 9, it will be very nice.
Article 9 case is okay. I will reply as a question after that. but just now, I want to make a presentation based on my preparation. Could you please accept that? But at the same time, Article 9 is not the so main point of Japan's defense, I believe, because many countries has a peaceful purpose constitution. And even if Japan possessed the constitution which prohibits to possess any armed military forces, despite this, we find one word to achieve this goal, something like that. That's why we cannot possess armed forces. That's why to achieve this goal, something like that, this sentence is a very important point. We can possess a self-defense force as armed force. So indeed, law is a law, but the sentence. When we face reality, we can adjust it even if the constitution prohibits to possess armed forces. So that's why indeed Article 9 affects Japan's way of thinking. That's true, but at the same time, this is not the most serious point. But the most serious point is reality. Reality. That's why I'm focusing on the reality from now as a presentation. Okay, I am sharing my data, PDF data. Can you see it? Okay.
Yes, sir, we can see.
Thank you very much. Okay, from now, I will make a presentation. Firstly, simply said, why India and Japan need each other? That is the most important question, because in the past, India easy to forget the presence of Japan, and vice versa, I think. This is not a natural partner, but now, completely different situation. This kind of the move has started, especially after the Shinzo Abe sworn in. But before the Shinzo Abe sworn in, indeed, my Prime Minister Modi's visit to India was as a governmental effort to improve the situation. That's true. But at the same time, yes, currently we need each other. And why India and Japan need each other? When we check this has started since the 2000s. So that's why to identify the answers, I need to analysis China's strategic purpose. So we're focusing on China. Yes, China is very important, unfortunately and fortunately. So that's why the content is like that. What is China's strategic purpose? Is the first one. And especially as I talk about China's activity in the Indian Ocean region. And we need to analyze the similarities between the China's activity in the Indian Ocean and China's activity in the other area, especially Sierra and Japan. And so after that, we try to analysis, China's strategic purpose and how should we improve. This sentence is a little mistake, but maybe I will analysis strategic purpose and how should we respond. It's maybe I will try to talk. So this is the contents. One mistake sentence, maybe please forget it. And so what is China's strategic purpose? When we check China's activity in the Ocean region, we can write such kind of the map. This is the location. China is building the port. China is deploying the military forces under the name of the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a civil purpose project, they say. But in the Djibouti, this is not the originally they said this is a civil purpose port, but now Chinese Navy deploying in Djibouti. So when we see the map, we can see China's activity in the Indian Ocean region, simply said, very active. Very active. For China, Indian Ocean region is very important. Why? Why China needs the Indian Ocean? Indeed, when we check the location, it looks like because of the China build the port, because China deploy the forces, it looks like combined with the India-China border area, it is containing India. Why China need to do? When we see this map, we can write this route. This is related to why China has done in the Indian Ocean. Because China is worrying the Malacca dilemma. What is Malacca dilemma? Indeed, China's development. China is growing power because of the coastal city is developing very fast. And these coastal cities rely on the energy supply or trade route through sea. But why China said Malacca dilemma? What kind of dilemma is a little controversial, but China's economical development, China's coastal cities development rely on the Malacca Strait, which is China's concern. Because energy route, because of the trade route, rely on CNM communications through Malacca Strait, and which area dominated by US and India. Malacca Strait is area, the strongest influential country is US and India. So to avoid using Malacca Strait, China want to build alternative routes. For example, the Middle East, Pakistan will go, Middle East, Myanmar, China, Middle East, Malaysia. Malaysia case, we can see the both side, Indian Ocean side, the South China Sea side, both, they are building a port and they try to connect these two ports through land route. In this case, they do not need to cross Malacca Strait. Instead of this, they can cross Malaysia Peninsula and they go to the, after they reach South China Sea, they go north and enter the port in the Cambodia, the Sihanoukville, and go north to China. So that's why this is also alternative route. So China is building alternative route. But still, all of these routes need to go through the Indian Ocean. So they need to build the port. They need to deploy military forces to secure the CRM communication in the Indian Ocean. But through this process, China need to contain India. That's a problem. China will not allow India to be the rival of China because their security rely on the Indian Ocean. So when we check the China's strategic purpose, to secure the China's supply route, China need to deploy its military presence in the Indian Ocean region. Such activity raises India's influence in the region. And in addition, China does not want India to be the rival of China. As a result, China has tried to contain India's rise in the both India-China border area and Indian Ocean. So now we should focusing on what should we do. Indeed, India faced such kind of China's activity, but India is not only victim. When we see the China's activity, when we compare the China's activity in the Indian Ocean with China's activity in the other area, we can find similarities. For example, this is one of the example. This is the number of the China's vessels identified within the contiguous zone, the water surrounding the Senkaku Island of Japan. Senkaku Island is Japan, of course. And the seas around the Senkaku Island, China's activity is increasing. This figure shows. This is a figure. The number of Chinese incursion in the India-China border, land border area in the Indian Ocean region, India-China border is. And so we can compare this. I overlap two figures. Wow. The two regions, China's activities looks like same. China is escalating their activity, not only against India, but also against Japan, against Taiwan, against the Philippines, against Vietnam, in many areas at the same time. That's why we can identify similarity of China's activities. And that will be the key. What should we do? So firstly, there are three important similarities. One by one, I will explain from now. The first one is in terms of the democratic norm and values. China has repeatedly disregarded for the international law and the democratic process when laying claim new territories. What kind of thing this is? For example, we can remember that in the India-China border, China's claim is expanding indeed, because a little ambiguity in the land border is that true, but at the same time, China start to say this area is China's territory. But the view from the exile government to the Tibet, they say this is India's territory, they think. But China say this is our territory. Now they are building the more than 600 villages in the India-China border area to expand their territory. Looks like an artificial island in the South China Sea. I'm Japanese, that's why I can say it. I can analysis China's claim sea around the Senkaku Island. Indeed, before the 1971, China hasn't claimed the Senkaku Island as their territory. But after that, they start to claim this is our territory. Why they can change the claim so easily? Because they do not hesitate to change the claim. That's one feature. Another feature is militarily, China's behavior is exploiting a power vacuum. What is it? Indeed, when we checked China's activity in the South China Sea, this is a figure published by the Japan's Ministry of Defense. We can easily to identify why we can say so. In 1950s, when France withdraw from the Indochina Peninsula, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, this area, China occupied half of the Paracel Island. In 1970s, after the Vietnam War, US withdrew from Vietnam, China occupied another half of the Paracel Island. In 1980s, Soviet troops reduced the number in Vietnam. That timing, China occupied six features of the Spratly Island. In the six feature in the Spratly Island, and so that is also related with the changing military balance. In 1990s, when US troops withdraw from Philippines, China occupies Mischief Reef. Every time military balance changed, and they try to steal the territory. They try to find the power vacuum and they try to steal it. This means that China is a thief we need to deal with. That is another feature of the China's territory expansion or China's provocation. So we need to focus on the third feature, third pattern of the China's activity. China has used its financial power to expand sphere of influence. I have already showed the map to China's activity in the Indian Ocean. So that is one of the examples. But of course, in the Southeast Asia or East Asia or South Pacific, or even if the Arctic, maybe China's activity has similar features. They build infrastructure project. They commit infrastructure project, but with a high interest rate. Generally, the World Bank or Asia Development ADB Bank, which is Japan lead, the interest rate is 0.25 to 3%. But when the Hambantota port faced a crisis because of the debauch of China, we understand that China's Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure project interest rate is very high, 6 to 8%. So that's why Sri Lanka need to return their debt to China by using the 400 years. 400 years, debt in the Middle Age, they need to return. It looks like the 400 years looks like this. So that's why Sri Lanka give China the right to control the Hambantota port for 99 years. And the pronunciation of the Chinese word of the 99 years is forever. Same word, different word, but same pronunciation. So that's why. And when China released Hong Kong to British, that time that was 99 years. So China loved this word to retaliate such kind of historical kind of debt for China. So that's why they use this 99 years. So that's why China used financial power to expand their military sphere of influence. And I have already mentioned the case of Djibouti. When China invests infrastructure project in Djibouti, they say this is not a military purpose. In the South China Sea, when they built an artificial island, they said this is not military purpose. But after that, we know that in the Djibouti, by using the influence of the Djibouti give China the naval base. And what happened in the South China Sea is in the artificial island, we can find the missiles or patrol planes, the bombers. This, China's promise, this is not a military purpose, is just a lie. So this is also part of the military. So how do countries affected by China's ambitions, like India and Japan, respond? We need to explain one by one. First one is, we must continue to respect and insist upon the rule-based order grounding the current international law. China changing the their territory claim case-by-case basis. That's why that is a problem. So recently, China published a new map, which claims the territory of the other countries as China's territory. In this case, countries around China should collaborate to criticize such activity of China. Rule-based order is very important. Territorial claim should not be changed. So that's why this is very important. We are right. China is wrong. That is rely on this. And secondly, we need to fill the perceived power vacuum by maintaining military balance. That is also important. Indeed, to do this, there are more small sections. For example, we can remember, if India and Japan cooperate each other, what happened? View from China, there are two fronts. They need to share the military expenditure against India, against Japan. They need to divide it. That's why collaboration make more easier situation for India and Japan to maintain military balance. And if we succeed to maintain military balance, there is no power vacuum. China try to steal it. And in this case, Indian Ocean is also a matter of concern. China is expanding influence in the Indian Ocean region. If so, if India has the will and capability, Japan or other the US and Australia or other countries will be able to release themselves from the heavy burden to safeguard security in the Indian Ocean. Yes, Japan's sea level communication is located in Indian Ocean too. Other countries too. That's why Indian Ocean security is very important to this country. But if this country shares more naval power in the Indian Ocean region, how about Pacific? We need to deploy the more forces in the Pacific to maintain military balance with China. So in this case, someone need to take the responsibility in the Indian Ocean. Of course, it is clear who should take responsibility. India is hope. India is best country, and India has the capability. And Southeast Asia is matter of concern in this case. That's why India and Japan can collaborate to support Southeast Asian countries because they lack enough capability, enough defense capability against China. That is a matter of concern. That's why China can expand their activity in the South China Sea. Yes, recently the Philippines tried to cut buoy or the buoy set up by the China's military in the Scarborough Shoal. That's a good activity, but we need to support Philippines more. In this case, their courageous move is very important, but without support, they cannot do that. So to maintain military balance, these three are very important. And to if we succeed to maintain military balance, China cannot find the power vacuum they exploit. Recently, indeed, not only US, but also India, Japan, Australia are seeking to possess the 1,000 kilometer to 2,000 kilometer long-range strike capabilities. This at the same time. This is very good move because if China focusing on India-China border or they attack Taiwan, in this case, they need to worry about the backside if this country possess the strike capability. That's why possessing the strike capability is key to maintain military balance. So we should do it at the same time. That's good. And the more specific issue to promote India-Japan security cooperation, indeed, we can do that many. Recently, Japan is planning to export Unicorn, which is antenna for the naval ship. So this is a move. Japan try to support Make in India project. India will build naval ship. In this case, the antenna will be made in Japan and designed by Japan. So that is good good as a cooperation. For new tech area, India and Japan is committing the new development project, which is unmanned vehicle. This is also a good project. In the future, also, Nanai-san had mentioned the space collaboration, but currently, indeed, both Ministry of Defense already started the unmanned vehicle development project. This is also good. New technology area, we should promote the cooperation more. And infrastructure, Andaman Nicobar Island is also already mentioned. But yes, Chinese submarine deployed the Indian Ocean through the strait of the strait between the island of Indonesia. But they came from the Hainan Island originally, in the Hainan Island located in the South China Sea. So if India possessed strong anti-submarine capability, they can detect all of the Chinese submarine, and Japan, US, or other countries will be relieved because of India's capability. And the anti-submarine capability during the Cold War, Japan pursued Russian submarine, in this case, Soviet submarine, because from Vladivostok to the Sea of Okhotsk, they deployed many nuclear ballistic missile submarine, and they need to cross strait between Japan's island. That's why every time Japan is a gatekeeper. So that's why Japan has a very strong anti-submarine capability. You can see Japan has nearly 100, now 80, but 100 anti-submarine patrol plane. This is ridiculously big. Not ridiculous, but a little bloody big. So why? Because compared with other countries, China has only 14, Japan has nearly 80 to 100. This is crazy level. So that's why Japan has the know-how of the anti-submarine capability. So that's why we can share the know-how. This is good. And India-China border area, yes, northeastern regions, Japan invests India's infrastructure project. Yes, the Indian Army can use this infrastructure to deploy the forces, even if this infrastructure collaboration is outside of Arunachal Pradesh. In Ladakh, we should do that the same. And or Japan can provide heavy machine to dig the mountain and make the road in the Ladakh or other border area. So that's why we can expand these projects in the future. About the third one we need to focusing on, we need to integrate our economic effort. Is this a defense issue? Indeed, this is also a defense issue. Because without ample budget, China cannot modernize their military. Without ample budget, the Belt and Road Initiative, China cannot do that. This means that Belt and Road Initiative is a project to make the military infrastructure. So for naval ship, they build a port, something like that. So that's why economic effort is also the defense issue. And so simply said, we should not give China money. So in this case, Japan has already started. Look at this. number of Japanese located to China is reducing the number. Nearly 30% now. So compared with 10 years ago. So why the Japanese live in China has decreased so rapid pace? In Japanese live in US hasn't decreased so much, but Japanese live in China is decreasing because Japan is preparing the situation. We need to decouple with China or de-risk, and this is a de-risking effort. So this is good effort, and we should do that. India and Japan should collaborate to do that. Because India could be the alternative market if the factory factory located in China need to relocate. India will be the destination. That's why this is related to the India-Japan cooperation. And even if this is an economic issue, indeed this is a military aspect. This issue has a military aspect. Okay. So we need to enter the conclusion. Indo-Pacific has become increasing ascendant region, and India-Japan has sought to restrain China's dominance. That is a very important part of the India-Japan security cooperation. So that is the reason the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe introduced the idea of Indo-Pacific and Quads when he addressed Indian Parliament in 2007. And at that time, he said very important word: a strong India is in the best interest of Japan, and the strong Japan is the best interest of India. The more China escalates the situation, the more defense capability of India and Japan and Quad will be institutionalized in the Pacific. That's why we need to do that. We must do that, and we can do that. Thank you very much. That's it. A little long presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sotaro. It's been a very good presentation from you, Bharat Nippon, and you have thrown light in a number of new areas. No doubt, you have touched upon the Malacca dilemma, which we had covered in the previous Andaman and Nicobar presentation also. Yes, the trade route, primarily the energy, China will be taxed. If they want to blockade Taiwan, I repeat, we should be able to blockade in the Malacca Straits. And that is the capability projection which should come up in the Indo-Japan defense cooperation. You see, there's the US 7th Fleet, which China has to fear, and there's the US 5th Fleet in the Middle East. So his Djibouti Horn of Africa ambitions. So there's a control on them. So the secure sea lines of communication, well, India, Japan have a role to play. You have covered very well the map which you showed. I think it seems that they're all over, not only in the BRI of theirs, but everywhere. And the BRI is basically the debt trap, and you touched upon Sri Lanka. And the debt trap, many nations would fall in it. But when every nation becomes a debtor, from where will they get the money? So maybe a good thing that countries are falling in debt with China. Now, you have also mentioned about the power vacuum. You see, power vacuum on one side and salami slicing on the Indo-China border. These are the two things. I will term salami slicing also in the island territories, which they are doing, building artificial islands with defense potential. And that has to be controlled. International law has not been able to take hold of them. The Scarborough Islands in Philippines, they have not withdrawn. So that is another thing which we have to do, because China is twisting history. They are twisting the legal aspects of law and getting the better of the world. So the world has to cooperate to meet their menace. While Japan has got the seafront, the island defense and island territories, India, Bharat, has multiple issues. We have got the mountains, the land boundaries. We have got the seafront, the coastal area. So our challenges there are greater, and we have to manage our last long coastline of 7,500 kilometers, plus the Indian Ocean region. But India is doing the right thing. We are having cooperation of the Indian Ocean region countries, and I think Japan and India have a long-term interest to get going in our defense cooperation. I would like to thank you because you have covered on the anti-submarine capabilities of Japan, the submarines, the unmanned vehicle, the space cooperation, and also lastly, you touched upon the Japanese diaspora, which is decreasing in China, and I would say rightly so, because China also polices its own people in America, Canada, and any other such countries. So I think the Japanese diaspora, if it is decreasing, it is more out of fear. And we have to also control this Japanese autocracy. So thank you very much, Dr. Sutaru, for a very enlightened presentation from you. And thank you very much once again. Now we'll move on to our next presentation, the final speaker of the session. That is Brigadier Ramesh Balan, who is going to touch upon cooperation in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and critical information infrastructure. May I invite Brigadier Ramesh Balan to take on.
Thank you very much, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, and also to the esteemed panelists. I think it's been an absolutely illuminating series of talks by absolutely eminent people who have given their perspective on a number of issues. And I would also like to thank the Indic Researchers Foundation for having given me this opportunity to talk about what I think is a fairly relevant issue in the context of what we're talking right now. So I will make a presentation and I will try and put across a certain set of points. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, for some reason it's not going into the full screen mode. So I will continue with where I am presently. I intend to talk about the cooperation in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and critical information infrastructure protection between India and Japan, that is Bharat and Nippon. I intend to cover my talk under the following heads. I will give you a brief introduction. Go about talking on the contextual significance of these three areas of technology and their geopolitical significance of employing these technologies. I will talk about the convergence of values, interests, and strength between India and Japan, and consequently the opportunities for cooperation. I will briefly touch upon certain real-world examples, and however, everything is not rosy. There are areas which are challenges, and these challenges need to be surmounted. So there are means for mitigation. And finally, my vision for the future. Moving on, we know that India and Japan are tied in terms of geopolitical, for geopolitical reasons. We both democracies, we share the same values. We have, just like the previous speaker alluded to, we have this issue about China, both of us. And we're not the only countries in the world, but we're definitely among those who are acutely affected by the way China conducts itself. And then we also form part of the Quad. And the rationale of the Quad, which is a quadrilateral security dialogue, is to build on bilateral and multilateral ties and settings. So with this backdrop, we have a geopolitical context in which this becomes important. And as we all know, critical and emerging technologies, space, and such like issues are today turning out to be areas where they occupy a high ground in the international geopolitical setting. So it's important for us to promote global technology markets and dwell on standards, because by dwelling on standards, what a country like China hopes to achieve and often succeeds is that it tries and occupies a high ground. Because once they say, for instance, in the context of say 5G, that these would be the standards, then the rest of the world in willy-nilly invariably has to conform to whatever it is. So the issue of standards cannot be let to pass just like that. We would like to therefore live in a world of openness, diversity, trust, and resilience, where market forces determine what the standards should be, and not subsidized agencies of the state We also need to be looking at technical standards, 5G technology. We need to scan the horizon, technology supply chains, artificial intelligence, semiconductor supply chains, biotechnology, space, cyber. And when we talk about cyber, we're looking at secure software, strengthening cyber resilience, which means you can bounce back after you've been hit by an attack, and then critical information infrastructure protection. So all of these are areas which are relevant, and it is in this context that this talk is set. Now, in the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk to you about the contextual significance of these three issues that have been talked of, that is artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and critical information infrastructure protection. We all know that artificial intelligence is an engine of productivity, of economic growth, and of public good. The Pricewaterhouse study of recent times talks about the fact that the global GDP will be pushed up by 14% by 2030 on account of AI. An Accenture report brings out that by 2035, the world global annual growth rates will be pushed up by 2 times. And the reason why it explains it will happen is because it says that the labor productivity will be pushed up by 40% due to innovative technologies and enabling more efficient work-related time management. By creating a new virtual workforce in terms of intelligent automation, and by diffusion of innovation in a manner that affects all different sectors and creates new revenue streams. Now, there are multiple dimensions or multiple areas in which the effect of AI can be seen. We can look at telecom, we can look at transport, life and medical sciences, human-computer interactions, smart cities, agriculture, e-government, banking and finance. All of these are most dynamically growing areas of application of AI. Continuing in the same way, in China, the US and Japan account for 78% of the total AI-related patent filings, which means that these countries are absolutely vigorous and active in this domain, and allying with those of them who meet our sense of values makes sense for India to grow. And of these, US and Japan, both members of the Quad, it makes pure sense for us to ally with them, to work with them in these areas. Out of all these various dimensions and nuances of AI, we have got certain technologies like that of machine learning, which is currently the main application of AI, deep learning and neural networks, which are the fastest growing AI technologies. We need to be focusing on these. There is an impact of AI on manufacturing. There is a growing digitalization of the industry 4.0, where you've got IoT, that is Internet of Things, 5G, cloud computing, big data analytics, smart sensors, augmented reality, 3D printing, and robotics. There is an effect of AI on firms, industries, and countries. And the sense that one gets when one reflects upon the way AI is expected to pan out is that the winner takes all, which means that those of them who are not in that position, they will be left as suckers. There is going to be an impact on the labor markets and a redistributive effect of AI. There's a Bruegel report which talks about job polarization, where certain blue-collar jobs below a certain datum line would kind of disappear and be consumed by AI. It would also influence wages. It would influence the income distribution and economic inequality. So all of these are going to be certain direct and indirect effects of AI. When you look at the context of cybersecurity and critical information infrastructure protection, there are different dimensions to this, and my focus, this being set in the in a session which is focused on the defense aspects, is to look at it from the perspective of cybersecurity and cyber warfare. We all understand that cybersecurity and cyber warfare could be viewed under 2 distinct threads. One part of it is something which deals with criminal activities, and the other part of it which deals with security in terms of national security. So my focus is on the national security, but please understand that these two merge and mix pretty easily, because oftentimes a nation state which is acting against you tends to masquerade as a criminal group, as an APT or a ransomware or whatever it be. So there is, at a functional level, there is often an overlap, because that is how that masquerading actor would like to be seen as. Now, overall, we have seamless global commons, just like the oceans and the space and the skies. Cyber is also a domain, in this case, a man-made domain, which is seamless and global, and it's common to everyone to utilize. And the military, which operates within this global global commons, is not a distinct entity by itself. Rather, it's part of a national ecosystem, which means, and by extension, it also part of the international ecosystem. So if there is a technology level which has got established in a particular country, the military is a direct beneficiary or suffers from the absence of the technology level that that country or that region possesses. It's a multidisciplinary field. What I mean by this is that there are a number of people in this domain who need to operate together. It's not merely the person who operates in the bits and bytes, but somebody who understands the strategy, someone who understands how this particular technology can be used to deliver certain effects. You need to have people who understand languages. You need to have people who understand cognitive sciences, and which means that you're looking at issues like, say, marketing and advertisement and so on. So a lot of issues are coming together in this field. The defining features of cyber operations are anonymity, which means that a person who prosecutes an operation is not known. That's the way the internet operates. It's non-attributability. Even if you know that something has happened, you cannot attribute it with definitiveness. There is a plausible deniability on the part of the person who prosecutes an action. There is probability and ambiguity, which means that everything is shrouded. You really cannot come out with the definitive answers. A person who's carrying out an attack needs to be persistent and maintain his presence or her presence in the place of operation or choice. Now, the attack surface has got extended and the defense is much tougher, which means, let's say, sitting within India, if I am talking on WhatsApp to my daughter in, say, Portugal, then the Indian cyber boundaries have got extended all the way up to Portugal. That's where the geographic boundaries and the national boundaries kind of mix and match with each other. There are no treaties, no international agreements in this domain. At the moment, we only have kind of best effort kind of approaches to look at it, normative positions, but nothing which is binding on people. Espionage and counter-value, imposition of cost and reputational damage is important. So the way a country would operate to, say, punish another one would be to try and impose cost and reputational damage. Let's say the national airline of a country is brought down. Let's say the power system is brought down. It impacts the cost and reputational damage of that country. And there are blurring lines between civil and military infrastructure, between CII and non-CII, that is critical information infrastructure assets, and non-critical information infrastructure assets, and the state versus non-state, which could be classified as, say, criminal agencies. Continuing with this is something which is relentless, perpetually ongoing, unrestricted warfare. There's an increasing primacy of non-kinetic gray zone warfare, political warfare, all below the conventional threshold. Information and cyber domain do not have strict parallels with conventional escalatory matrices. So if we talk about, say, what happened in Ladakh, or what happened in, say, Arunachal, or what happened on the Scarborough Shoal, it's defined in a particular geography or a particular area, and the escalation, the way China normally operates is to operate in, say, the gray zone. That is something like what it might happen transpire in the cyber domain as well, except that anonymity and the non-attributability will be absolutely at premium. You would not come to know with any degree of definitiveness as to who the prosecutor is. There is a technology differential between countries, and it's not possible for a country, given its technical position on a given date, to quickly level that gap. Therefore, it requires a whole of government approach, and there is a process and technology issues which require to be put on premium. And every country needs to have enabling standards, legislations, and ecosystems. And here I hand it to Japan for having put together its cyber strategy, for having put together its data policies, and so on and so forth. And India, of course, catching up, but it's doing so after a lot of deliberation and debate. And the effectiveness of cyber domain is something which is most effective below the threshold of conventional war. And autocratic nations, those nations which do not respect the rule of law, which are not democratic, they tend to be better and more willing to use AI to control people, information, and weapons by using controlling technologies on various kinds of sensors, on snooping, on surveillance, and so on. Now, AI has an effect on cyber and critical information infrastructure protection as well. As I mentioned earlier, there is a centrality of data. Data is collected through multiple means in today's technologies. Your smartphone is spawning off enormous amount of data, and so also are the regular computers, where your location data, your personal preferences, your personally identifiable information, all of this information is out there for the grabs. And this kind of information is picked up by autocracies, and democracies are rather hampered in this sphere. AI is used to power and automate cyber attacks. You can attack at machine speeds. You can defend at machine speeds. There is social engineering which is in progress. A lot of stuff which you get to see on Twitter, now famously called X, happens because there is active social engineering which is happening on Facebook as well. There are several effects of cognitive warfare which can be influenced by artificial intelligence, and machine learning systems themselves are vulnerable to hacking, because you can interfere with the training, you can interfere with data, you can poison it, you can cause reverse exploitation. So in this backdrop, let's look at how India and Japan, is there a convergence of values, interests, and strengths? And my contention is that there is. To begin with, AI has got transformative economic, societal, and national security potential. And realizing that, it's important for us to make sure that we are at a position where we can please influence it to the extent that no one can exploit artificial intelligence against our interests. Now, technological innovation is shaped by, between India and Japan, is shaped by our shared democratic values and respect for human rights. And therefore, what the two countries put together and the way we innovate is influenced by a common thread. There are political interests between India and Japan. For instance, in this domain, we could stand up as an alternative to China's techno-authoritarian model of technology development and use. And it also builds on the Quad through bilateral and multilateral approaches to counter the malicious use of AI for surveillance, censorship, and misinformation. All of these are happening on our north. And it's important for us to realize, call it out, and to understand how to defend and protect ourselves and to make sure this kind of thing does not continue. In terms of the strengths that the two nations possess, Japan stands out in simulation and robotics and human-computer interaction. In terms of artificial intelligence research, India stands out in terms of data mining and data science. I continue on the strengths. India projects itself as being the AI garage for 40% of the world. We've got a huge population and we got huge number of scenarios. And it's very easy for someone who builds in India and who creates artificial intelligence settings over here, he can actually scale it across the world. India has a huge potential of IT professionals and human capital. And here, this is one area where India can contribute to Japan on account of the fact that the brilliant Japanese today have an aging population. On the National Cybersecurity Index, India scores marginally better than Japan, but the two have complementary skills and strengths. So there is a high possibility that between the two countries, we can have a good association going. Japan is strong with semiconductor fabrication. India is wonderful in design. Japan is characterized by advanced supply chain resilience. And why supply chain resilience is crucial comes out of the fact that artificial intelligence finally requires a base hardware on which it will operate. And that hardware comes out of having chips. The chips is part of the advanced supply chain resilience. Japan is virtually the sixth eye out of the 5 eye countries. It's virtually the sixth eye in terms of intelligence. So therefore, cooperation between India and Japan can help the Quad. It can help India and Japan, and certainly it can help India. And Japan has a strong framework for public-private partnership and world-renowned manufacturing facilities. So that's the kind of strength that Japan brings onto the table as far as these issues are concerned, and therefore it makes sense for us to participate with Japan. And thereby, India and Japan already have a bilateral cyber dialogue process going. We have at least 5 iterations done in this context, and we have the next one, the 6th one, coming up next year. So we already have a process in place whereby this collaboration can take place. Japan has also articulated and iteratively refined its cyber strategy. It has a data protection policy in place. It's developing defense, deterrence, situational awareness, and assessment capabilities. Now, one of the key issues we had seen is the attribution of the non-attributability. So if there is a country which can attribute with accuracy and with speed, then that country is certainly on top. Then Japan believes in international cooperation and collaboration. It's working to isolate countries that do not commit to international norms. And it has chosen to promote the rule of law in cyberspace. Most of what I've said about Japan and India, about Japan is also common to India. That's why one of our ministers, Ravi Shankar Prasad, in an earlier time frame, mentioned that there's great convergence between these two countries. Moving on, therefore, there are opportunities for cooperation between India and Japan. We have bilateral agreements, for instance, in place in cyber domain. We could also have something in the artificial intelligence domain, but we really don't have to wait till that is put in place, because we already have a framework under the Quad where we can start a collaboration straight away. Cybersecurity collaboration could take place. We could have joint exercises and workshops. We could have information sharing for sharing of threat intelligence, research and development on multiple areas. We could look at investment in trade, international forums, and in this we could look at the UN and the Quad. We could look at capacity building for each other. We could look at critical information infrastructure protection, regulatory frameworks, and public-private partnerships. So there are a host of domains, and it depends on which thread we pick up and what we want to develop. But opportunities are galore. Now, there are real-world examples where this has already been done and is being done. There is collaboration between India's Niti Aayog and Japan's National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology on a joint research project to develop AI-driven healthcare solutions. We could have one similarly on natural disaster resilience. Japan is a country which has been rocked by various kinds of natural disasters in terms of earthquakes and tsunamis and so on. And they've learned to live with them and to handle it with absolute effectiveness. So these are areas which AI can be used to predict and thereby to mitigate the effects and to be able to handle it in a more efficient manner. There are collaboration with India and Japanese universities on responsible development of AI. And why responsible development is necessary is because we know that AI has got a flip side to it. There could be sharing of, there is already an arrangement between India's CERT, that is CERT-in, and Japan's CERT on sharing of cyber threat intelligence between the two countries. There could be collaboration between banks to share threat intelligence and jointly develop cybersecurity solutions. There has been a joint investment between the two countries and others on the Africa-Asia-Europe submarine cable, which enhances disaster resilience and critical information infrastructure protection and resilience on account of data sharing. And then there could be collaboration to enhance energy security and joint efforts to secure the critical energy infrastructure. So these are examples of the way in which our two countries have worked together already, and there are opportunities here. But there are challenges too. The challenge is that there are non-negligible barriers to effective technology cooperation, including different approaches to data governance between India and Japan, varying economic and technological capabilities between the two countries. Clearly so, Japan is really up there as far as its manufacturing capabilities are concerned. Companies like Sony and Nintendo and so on are ones which have been absolutely staple for us for long periods of time. And we have divergent geopolitical priorities. But there is one area where we really converge, and we've talked about that in any case. Our mitigation approach could be to start within small bubbles of trust and then to expand these, to take advantage of existing international forums. Look at binding norms, laws, and regulatory frameworks we could build, and having built, we could share them with the rest of the world as a positive example, which the rest of them could pick up and follow. We could have mechanisms for peaceful resolution of disputes in cyberspace. We could pick up joint research projects in AI, for example, building of privacy-preserving machine learning methods at scale. The scale part is somewhere where India and India's ecosystem can really help with. We are very good with data. We could put in place confidence-building measures for building and maintaining trust and transparency, which includes sharing of threat intelligence and trusted access to dependable external intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, participation in joint training, subject matter expertise exchange, and developing the capacity and capability for attribution. So with that, we've also, as I mentioned previously, that there are technology standards which are now the high ground between nations, and therefore these are areas where we can, participate jointly to create technology standards and frameworks of collaboration. We could also put in place a framework for verifiable and progressive transfer of technology and tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now, there are some countries which might be sensitive to this, but it's a matter of creating the kind of trust that we need. And finally, we could have treaties, alliances, and cyber diplomacy to build on all of these. So having looked at the entire canvas, we saw that India and Japan have certain strengths, values, and other issues on which they can have a pressing need to come together. We've seen that these areas of technology are crucial not merely to the two countries, but also to the rest of the world. And we have a framework of existing bilateral agreements and overarching umbrella of Quad within which we both operate. And therefore, I think it's time for us to get our act together, put our foot on the pedal and press it down, allocate budget and resources, and work against a focused plan against tight timelines. There is a huge scope for the future here. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. Konnichiwa, I hope I pronounced it right, and Jai Hind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Balan. It's been an excellent presentation from you, much of an eye-opener for most of us, particularly the student community who would be present and listening. So you have really covered, starting from the promotion of the global technological standards, for example, the 5G. And here I would say how UI has been sidelined, which is very encouraging in the Indo-Japan affair. The technological supply chains and the semiconductors you have touched on. Throughout the day, actually, we never spoke about the semiconductors. And the global GDP, which you have said will be pushed up by artificial intelligence by 14% by 2030 is very encouraging. And the Accenture report also, by 2035, 2x of the global annual growth. So I think with the, you have shown that US, Japan, and China account for 78% of the total AI. So India has much to cooperate with Japan, and here I would say also with US, so that we move forward. Need of best practices, very much there. And the blurring lines of the civil military infrastructure, the state versus non-state actors, is a big threat, a big menace, any day, any time, and we all have to be careful. In fact, when you say gray zone warfare, the smartphones you mentioned, I think the whole world, every mobile user is a soldier by himself who has got all the destructive element within him. And so we have to really safeguard from the smartphones. Cognitive domain, I said, actually, the cognitive domain for military commanders is going to be a big factor. And we have had warfare in the recent Ukraine and Russia also, where the commanders have been dwarfed in their cognitive domain and in decision making. Overflow of technological information also is a danger by itself. Yes, we have got a lot of convergences by Japan, values, interests, and strengths, and I think we must exploit them in the best interest. And it was most heartening to hear that Japan is the sixth eye, so we know how well we have matched the five eyes. The sixth eye is very much with us, and that is again very encouraging. And with all that, cyber crimes taking place in India also, we are the largest users of mobiles. We are victim of the cyber crimes, and it is heartening that we have a cyber defense agency also, which the government has set up and responsible for the cyber defense strategy of the military, and which in turn is for the national security. I think the memorandum of cooperation and understanding which is there is going to take forward Indo-Japan relationship in the world of artificial intelligence, cyber security, and communication infrastructure setup. Thank you very much, Brigadier Ramesh Balan. Very wonderful presentation. And I would like to thank each one of the esteemed speakers, General Rajan Kochar, Commodore Deshmukh, Dr. Sataru, Madam Mandai, and you, Brigadier Balan. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the Indic Researcher Forum for having put up a wonderful range of subjects. And I think it is very illuminating. All those who are attending go home richer in the treasure house of knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
sir.
much, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed an insightful session on a very relevant subject. I thank the chair, session chair, and the speakers for their valuable time. With this, we have come to an end to our second session.